All right. Okay, ready? All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Do Better, Honey, Do Better 24/7 with Ed Ready. Today, we will be talking about preferences versus phobias within the in regards to the LGBTQIA plus community. I have two awesome people here with me. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Miss Jordan.
Hi, my name is Jordan. It's Jordxn.Simon on TikTok, which is my biggest platform. And I like to focus on intersectionality and intersectional feminism and what it means to fight for social justice and social advocacy for everybody and what that looks like in terms of everybody. Because in my opinion, nobody's free till we're all free.
Agreed.
Everyone, I'm Javon. I go by JDR93 on TikTok. A lot of people call me JDR93. It's okay.
Oh, I'm
wrong. Everyone does the double E and the A. I get it. But I kind of just I talk about some social issues. I do dance trends, just, post about real life stuff that's happening. But I definitely like to get my voice out there to make sure people, not only in the Black community, also people in the LGBTQ plus community, have some sort of positive representation from a smaller platform compared to a lot of other users. But yeah, everyone needs to be, show up and show out and have their voice heard.
Great. All right, so let's do a little icebreaker really quick. I just want to hear about anything exciting, anything new going on in y'all's lives.
Go ahead, Jordan.
Yeah, whoever, just start, just start talking.
I went on a really great date the other day, and I'm just giddy. Life's good. Life's good.
Yes.
Exciting. That's always exciting.
Oh yeah.
That's great. I've been on this fitness and food journey for the past 4 weeks. I got a personal trainer and stuff. I lost 12 pounds in 4 weeks, which is awesome. COVID and just eating out every day and just not really being able to do things. Definitely did a lot. And my boyfriend is in town next week, so
yes,
hey.
Exciting.
So
I love it. I love exciting things. My life is a little boring right now, but it's okay. We're gonna add some excitement somewhere. Somewhere it will happen, but not right now.
It'll happen when it's time.
There you go. I'm okay with it being kind of dull, so I'm good right now.
Yeah.
But let's get into it. So I definitely wanted to come on and talk about a lot of things that I had noticed on TikTok in reference to what is considered a preference and what is considered a phobia in regards to the LGBTQIA plus community. There has been, I think it's died down a little bit. I don't know. I haven't seen much of it, but at one point it was every video, and there were a lot of people that had some strong opinions.
Yes.
So I think the first thing I kind of want to start off and ask might be a little off the wall, but how do you all feel about someone who is not part of the community making that determination as to what someone in the community should be offended by?
Absolutely. You can't. I feel if you're not, how you have opinions from outside the club? You can't even get in. You can't even get in. Why are you thinking so hard? Nobody asked you. You can't be offended by that. Okay. All right.
Do you think that some people who are not part of the community that did speak on it actually cause more problematic issues within the community or with other non-community members, I'll say?
Yes, because then you add religion and then society behind it. And it's well, I've grown up feeling this way and I don't like this. Well, in all actuality, it really doesn't even affect you. And even if you dive into the community, as in even some of the phobias that were brought up, it still doesn't affect you because sexuality and gender and all of that, people like to lump into one. Mm-hmm. And if we all knew the differences and understood how attraction works and stuff like that, I think everyone would have a happier life and a lot more people would be quiet.
Absolutely. I think that unless you're prepared to do the work of unpacking not only why you feel that way, but exploring and explaining it with some amount of detail or at least some amount of knowledge, just stay
Yeah.
quiet. Because even if you think you're helping and you say something that's unintentionally offensive or divisive, all you've done is make more chaos in a very chaotic room. And
Yeah, implicit biases are definitely prevalent.
Literally was about to bring.
And I just think if people could unpack, I talked about this on another live too. If people could unpack their implicit biases as to like why they feel this way or why they don't understand what people are saying, and if they stopped using the whole "you're forcing something on us," if they like cut that out of their vocabulary and actually listen to what was said, I think a lot of this combativeness would die down. And I think a lot of the preferences that they lay out would actually be uncovered, and they could grow from that.
Right.
But
so do you think that, why do you think that so many non-LGBTQIA plus persons feel that by labeling it a phobia, it's in a way forcing? Like, why do you think that that within itself is so problematic to them?
because people don't know the second half of phobia.
They don't. They truly do not.
They literally talk about the first half and talk about the fear and don't talk about the whole second half that says aversion to something.
Exactly.
And if they literally took the second half of that definition and said there's an aversion to something, then yes, there would be a phobia attached to their implicit biases. But since they won't, we're always going to have it's a preference. But honestly, literally take the second half of phobia and if it's applicable to what you're saying, then that's, I mean, it falls into that category.
Yeah, and kind of bounce off that, I think nobody wants to feel like the bad guy. Like if it's like, oh, you're such and such, or oh, you're such and such, like it feels like an attack on your entire person as opposed to like a call to reflect on your actions. So like I know when I talk a lot about like phobias or like when I talk about like racism, I'm like, oh, that's rooted in racism. People are like, I'm not racist, I couldn't possibly, or I'm not some such and such phobic or anything. And I'm like, listen to what I'm saying. It's not, you're not a bad person. We grew up in a homophobic, biphobic, racist society. You're a product of your environment. All I'm saying to you is check that, because what you did caused harm this way, but nobody wants to be the bad guy. So everybody gets all defensive when at the end of the day, like just listen and listen with open-mindedness instead of defensiveness. And you're going to learn a lot more and you're going to grow a lot more.
Yeah. People don't like the word phobia because it's rooted in it's the negative context that is usually involved with that word. With that suffix, I should say. No one wants to be associated with being phobic of anything because it's bad. It's bad. But again, second half of the definition, it doesn't have to be bad. It just means that you grew up, and everyone's environment is different. Like they're all a microcosm. Like everyone's environment is a microcosm of how they think the world is. And just because there are a lot of things any of us on this panel can say, yes, I said and did things when I was younger because I thought around me I was able to say these things or do these things. And then I learned through whether trial and error or just like education, that things that I could have done in a younger age, it's not conducive for a healthy environment, healthy world. So I think if everyone does that self-reflection, I think we'll all be a little bit better in life.
So that brings me to ask about those who are part of the community, but explicitly state, it's not a phobia, it's a preference. How do you think that ties into the way non-community members feel about it? Because we all know if you have one person from some particular perspective who says what you feel, they are the person that you only listen to.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's super, I hate to say it, but it feels very counterproductive. Like even if you're in that community, you still grew up in such and such a society or such and such an environment. Like you're not, like you're still shaped and molded by the same world that taught you how to be afraid of or how to hate or how to avoid or whatever the feeling is, such and such a thing. Even if you are that person or that thing, you were still taught to feel that way. And so it is still our responsibility and it's still our job, whether you're in the community or out of the community, to check those biases and to continue to learn and grow and push yourself, because just because like you're in the group doesn't mean that you can't do the group harm. And I think that a lot of time people don't want to take those steps. So it's like, oh, well, this is my community, so I can say and feel how I want. It's like, that's cool, except you're putting other community members in danger. Like if you're in the community, you got to do possibly more work, because this is your group, this is your family, these are your people. And yet it doesn't give you a pass to not learn and grow and challenge and listen to other people just because you're in the crowd.
I think also to piggyback off of that, I think here's the thing that confuses me. When it comes to LGBTQ plus issues, like such as like the phobias and the preferences, people are so weary and they're so misunderstanding of what we're talking about. But when it comes to racism or misogyny, it's like it clicks. It like all of a sudden they understand when somebody says they won't date a Black person because they're Black. They're like, oh, that's racist. But for some reason, when you tack that onto the LGBTQ plus community, everyone just doesn't understand what we're saying and we're forcing something on them. Yeah. And I just don't understand how you can, if 2 + 2 is 4 on that end, how does 2 + 2 not equal 4 on, like, what is going on over here?
I think about that all the time. Like in my intersectional works, like I will talk about like, oh, like, okay, so Black men experience racism, but benefit from misogyny. Impossible. I'm like, okay, Black women, you can also be homophobic. Never could be me. I'm like, baby, you have the steps. You've done the math. Just take it over here and transit over here. Nope. For some reason, it doesn't. I'm like, if we can say like, oh, I don't date X because of Y, that's applicable every single time, unless you have like some deep-rooted trauma. And I love you all to death, but not all of y'all got that deep-rooted trauma. You just feeling some type of way. Sorry.
Yeah. So go ahead. Did you want to say something?
No, I'm saying no, yes, everything that was just said.
I want to read something, a comment that someone left in regards to how saying someone being biphobia, listen to me, being biphobic, am I saying it right? Okay. Is different than certain other phobias because legitimate psychological phobias are different, as in they're irrational fears that elicit a physical response. And I think people think that kind of thing, like if you were, I don't know, like arachnophobia. They think stuff like that. And I think they try to tailor, this is just me speaking, I'm here to learn. And if I'm wrong, they tailor, people love changing narratives. They love to change wording. They love to change meaning. So they say, someone calls you biphobic, I'm a bad person. Y'all think I don't like this, I don't like that. And I think that's a lot of where this anger comes from, when people who are not in the community have to state it's a preference. Like, I feel like this. I might have my opinion, but it's not my place. And that's just what it is.
It's literally the second half of the definition that even that statement is missing. It's like you said about arachnophobia, it's like the irrational fear of arachnids. Or you see an arachnid and you're like, I want nowhere near that. Not even that. I just don't want anywhere near that. That's just not my thing. Exactly. And literally, if people took the or aversion to something and apply that to what they're thinking, as in like, we're thinking you're a bad person, I think everything would be cleared up if they just did some introspection. And like, word of the day, introspection. If people did that and not took it as like a jab to their character, or like, you're just a bad person who doesn't like anyone, and you're just a hateful being. If people like just took that guard down and really was like, okay, well, I don't like this, and not because I'm not attracted, or not because I'm not phobic. If you literally just looked at it and said, hey, I would not date somebody because of X. Well, if it's applicable under that definition, you've exhibited those behaviors.
Exactly. And like, I think even like the conversation I hear a lot is like, oh, like I tolerate, or I respect, or I understand, or I'm cool with. And I'm like, you can have arachnophobia and not want all spiders to disappear. But you still have arachnophobia. You can still have phobias, and you can still have biphobia and be like, oh no, I'm cool with bifolk, except like I wouldn't date one. Like, I'm cool with spiders, but I wouldn't touch one. I mean, yeah, but like at the end of the day, you still have that initial reaction. You still have that aversion too. And just because you don't think they shouldn't exist doesn't mean that you're like you're not the world's worst person. You're not walking around saying bi people should just off the earth. But what you are saying is, I don't associate with them for A, B, C, D, E reasons. And that's not okay, but that's fine. But that's biphobia. And you got to call a spade after a certain point.
So I'm curious. I will say this. I think I've heard, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I've heard a lot of the conversation being more so geared towards women dating bisexual men.
Yes, because in society it is easier. And I talked about this too. It is easier for women to have that exploration or have that have their bisexuality tolerated by society. Because if you think of cisgender men who, when they want to have like threesomes or groups, they don't want another man involved. They want another woman involved because it's hot to see my woman with another woman.
Right.
And even in like the media, there's even an episode of the show Insecure. As soon as like a woman finds out that their man has done the same exploration that they could have very well done, all of a sudden it's like, oh no, that's just his gateway to being gay. Like totally negating any other sexuality in between straight and gay. Like totally like negating everyone in between, anyone who identifies as pan, bi, demi, anything like that is like they feel invisible. And there's a lot of bi erasure in the LGBTQ plus community, and that's resulting in pan erasure. Were you about to say? I'm sorry.
Well, no, because I'm learning, so I'm trying to soak it
Yeah.
in.
A lot of the time, bi people are erased from the conversation. Even though LGBT, we know that it's lesbian, gay, bi, trans. We know that.
Bacon.
But right. Because of just like this conversation that we're having now, a lot of the times, even with like lesbians, when it comes to bi women, like they don't want someone for some reason who has done anything with the opposite identifying gender.
Yeah. Like I had somebody tell me once that they like didn't mess with bi women because they didn't want secondhand man. And I was like, do you think you don't bathe after? Like, what is wrong with you? But that mindset that like you're either A or B, when in actuality, there's a whole spectrum of sexuality and places to fall and what attraction looks like. And I think that women, especially bi women, deal a lot with the fetishization of it. Like I just get a lot of like fetishizing comments sometimes, but men specifically oftentimes have to deal with the anger and the violence that comes with it. Like I never have to worry like, oh, like somebody knows I'm bi, like I'm gonna get jumped. Like that never crosses my mind. But it does cross the mind of men. And I think that it's, for me, I see it as rooted in the patriarchy and rooted in misogyny. And like men have to be big and tough and strong. And when we associated being gay with being weak and feminine, that put any male identifying person in harm's way.
Yes.
And I think that women oftentimes think that like, oh, like I'm a woman and I'm the victim of the patriarchy, therefore I can't be complicit in it, when you definitely totally can. Like if you're like, I want to be free from the patriarchy, but when my boyfriend cries at the Notebook, he's a punk. like you are enforcing the same patriarchal rules. Even if you lose at the end, you're still playing the game. So if you're playing to win, you have to really confront like your own internalized misogyny and your own internalized beliefs, in addition to the outward stuff that you experience as someone who identifies as a woman. Like it's a different game. So I know like I'm in danger in some ways, but I'm way safer than a bi man. I had a friend of mine come out once and more found out, like I found out, and he was like, dude, like don't tell anybody, please don't tell anybody, like I'll never be able to date again and nobody's going to talk to me and I could get kicked out. Like it was a whole thing. And I was like, bro, like I'm so sorry, because I came out 6 months ago and my life is colon. Like it just like the difference was very painful. And I think about that a lot in this conversation.
And that adds to the DL culture.
Right.
And I've mentioned this before. Everyone in this world has added to the DL culture in some way, whether they can acknowledge it or not. Whether you are part of the heterosexual community and you have gone to church or like and spewed the Bible to people and told people that if you're gay or mess with men that you're fruity, that you're going to hell. Well, no one wants to be a roughneck or even a very, very masculine man and has done something with a man. Like no one can know. Or even in the like the LGBTQ plus community. Talk about like just like not wanting to date a bi man if you're a woman, if you're identifying as a woman. Like, oh, okay, no, I'm not going to tell anyone I'm doing anything with a man because this woman that I'm into is going to be like, Or even when it comes to like gay men, like if you are not more masculine, if you're not like masculine presenting, like you're not going to go out with a feminine guy if you want to be masculine presenting, because then they're really going to know you're gay. And it's just like all of this heteronormative misogynistic ideology that is added to like not only our society but the society in general, with people. It's all adding to this culture, and a lot of people like to go like, I don't respect DL guys. Not everyone's saying that a DL guy should go out of his way to cheat, or possibly cheat, I should say, or even do anything that he shouldn't do in a regular relationship. But also, we have to acknowledge the fact that we have all added to the reason why stuff like this is happening.
Exactly.
Like, this is happening for a reason. Like, no person is just gonna like, oh, I'm just gonna cheat on somebody and just go be on the DL. Like, no one wants to do that. Like, no one in the world wants to do that if they really think about it. But if we all could be like, well, if I was more tolerant, as people like to use, if I was more tolerant of everyone, maybe DL men wouldn't exist. Maybe they would just be men, and maybe they could do the same sort of exploration as women are able to do in society without the repercussions. Like, if men were able to do that the same as women could do that, like I said, if they were able to explore and figure out how they identify and do all of that the same way women can, I think all of this would be like nixed. Like, we wouldn't have to have this conversation. Like,
absolutely. And I think that I know a lot of the women I talk to like refuse to acknowledge their role in that. But like in one breath, they'll say like, oh, I don't date bi, like I love bi men, but I don't date them because they're soft. And DL men suck because they cheat on me. And I'm like, baby, they cheated on you because you didn't create an environment in which they felt safe and loved. Like you built an unhappy home. Like you built a house of straw and then wonder why it collapsed. That was you. Those were your actions. Like, don't blame the wind for blowing. Blame the fact that you built a low quality house and then asked it to do something else. You built a house of straw and said, be brick. It can't do that. If you say, oh, I built a house of straw, so I have to be extra careful here. Maybe the wind won't tear your house down. Just a thought to think. Like, we have to acknowledge the role that we have in our own downfall sometimes. And if we want to say like, oh, like they lie and they cheat, I'm like, is it cool? No. But if you really confront why, like, we built a society where they're literally unsafe to exist. Like I was reading somebody's comment section one time where all they said was like, you know, DL guys, like they would exist without women and da 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 da. And I looked at the comment section and people were like physically like threatening to harm DL men. And I was like, your words led to these actions, which means that even if you don't feel like you had a hand in this, it came from your rhetoric. It came from that offhand comment.
Yeah.
We have a role in it and we need to at least acknowledge it.
Yeah. If we all can acknowledge it, I think that would help. Like, even like me being gay, like hearing that, like, you don't want a feminine man or a man who gender bends or anything like that. You want a man. And it's like, if you like deviate from that, and then you hear about women who don't want feminine bi men, not all men in the LGBTQ community are feminine. Some are more feminine because there's some sort of a balance that you create with femininity and masculinity. And some men are more masculine than they are feminine. But to say that all bi men are feminine is adding to that rhetoric, further adding to DL men, because, well, I definitely can't show up. I can't cry at this movie, like you said, or I can't show emotion. I'm not a punk. Well, like, everyone has emotions. It's a human reaction. And if you can't like laugh or cry or even like be sad about something without being deemed quote gay, like I don't understand how especially women can sit here and say, well, like, I don't understand. I don't respect how he's not coming out, and they can live their life all the way they want to. But then you're gonna talk about your man if he cries about something. Like, if he's crying at anything but your wedding, you are talking down about him, talking about something. He's a woman. Like, I don't understand how you can say that and then say
and like it does everyone a disservice at the end of the day. Like women everywhere are like, down with the patriarchy. But it's like, you know, like saying like, oh, like men who cry are soft. You have now stripped men of all emotion, like
emotions.
That's harmful. Like these systems of oppression strip us all of some amount of humanity, whether it hypersexualizes us or undersexualizes us or we're too emotional, not emotional enough. Like, we have lost the ability to be human, and that impacts everyone. And it includes bi men and gay men and DL men. It includes them, but it also impacts your straight boyfriend at home. Like I remember there was this one girl, and she was dating this guy, and he was straight, but he liked to get his nails done. Like they're just having a good time. And every time she posted a picture of him, people would be like, oh, he's using you as a beard and da 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 da. And I was like, this is really harmful. But then you're gonna go to your girl and be like, why doesn't my boyfriend ever cry? Why doesn't he ever do anything sweet? I'm like, because you stripped him of the emotional vulnerability when you bullied that other guy for doing something. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Right.
So in listening to all that too, it just really brings out like the stereotypes that we as a society have as to whom is supposed to look a certain way.
Yep.
Right.
I've heard and have seen in comment sections of cis people where they have openly said that they just assume that and I'm going to speak on some of the females, women I've heard say this, that they assume that bisexual men, they're all feminine. They're all that. And that to me, I don't know. I just think that's weird because
it's a gross generalization.
Yeah.
Honestly.
That this is how trans people are supposed to look, bisexual people are supposed to look or behave, gay people, how are they supposed to look and how they're supposed to behave. And that's something that is, I think, as straight people, that a lot of us do not want to unlearn because we already have that. And I do blame media a lot.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Just like everything, I think of most things on a spectrum. And that's just because like I'm Black and I'm gay. Like I have to think of a lot of things on more of a spectrum than a lot more people have. And even women, Black women in the LGBTQS community, they have to think of things on an even greater spectrum because of intersectionality. And I think that society has added such social norms, quote, that they think that if you, in order to be the straightest man you can be, you have to be with a woman. And if you deviate from that in any sort of way, you are automatically lesser than, you are soft, you're not a real man. And I think just even taking like that piece and adding it to what you're saying, it's like, I've met many bi men in my life. I went to college in Boston. I met a lot of LGBTQ plus members in my life. And I don't know many bi men who are like even, I'm gonna say her name, but Keita Rose, her video about men twerking in the club. She doesn't want a man twerking in the club. And it's like, not all bi men are twerking in the club. But you're further adding to the dangerous rhetoric that is spewed about bi men not being masculine enough.
Right.
And I think that further adds to why women aren't attracted to bi men, because they automatically think that they're feminine or they have to compete with a man, or that's not the case, because if they're choosing you for a reason. Right. And if you're creating a healthy and safe environment for them to be able to express themselves and just be themselves, and for you to be as understanding as possible, that's not something you're gonna have to worry about.
Right.
But like, if you're so worried about him cheating on you, you're gonna worry about him if he's bi or straight. So
that's what I'm saying.
I don't understand why you're even worried about.
I'm like, you worried about cheaters. Meanwhile, you keep going back to that ex who cheated on you 56 times, ready to make it 57, but a bi man, oh no, I don't understand.
We don't want to accept those type of comparisons though, because then we have to look at, it doesn't make sense for someone to have thought, there's something wrong with being. I want to shift the conversation just a little bit, but also still speak on this because I could be wrong. I've noticed how a lot of times these same stereotypes, these same phobias affect when one comes out, outside of that, affecting the relationship, not always in a positive manner with family, friends, after the fact. So I guess I want to start with the question, what would you say to someone who has yet to come out? What would be your advice to them?
I would say when it's safe to do so for yourself.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
I don't think it's something that you should rush. I understand like the burning feeling. It's like, I can't really be myself around people that I love. But usually, especially from the Black experience, usually you get feelers for who you can talk to in your family and who kind of just, even like the slight digs, like, oh, he has sugar in his tank or stuff. Like you'll hear these things throughout your life that you're like, okay, if I tell this person, they might not react in the best way. But if you have an overall feeling of like, if I do this, I could possibly get kicked out, physical harm, mental harm, anything like that, I know how hard it is to like not want to hold something like that in and be your true authentic self. But honestly, if it's not the safest situation for you, you have no backup plan to help yourself, and you are pitting yourself in a corner, I would say wait to do that until it is safe to do so. Because once you're in that safe space, it really doesn't matter how the other people that you're worried about, how they react, because you've already created your safe space and refuge to go back to, even if they don't. And if they don't in that point, then yes, it's going to hurt, but it's going to hurt a lot less if they don't accept it and they do another action behind it.
Yeah, that's also my advice. Just, I know that I waited until like I felt like we as a family and as a house had like grown more and adapted more and learned more, and it was going to be safe for me at the end. And I still have friends I haven't come out to. I'm like, it won't be the end of the world, but they're not going to take this well. And ultimately, I don't want to deal with it. Like, I don't feel like losing you today. Like, I don't feel like grieving a relationship, but at the same time, I don't feel like pushing and telling you either. So like, it's a weird catch 22, but like, you have to wait until you are safe and prepared for the consequences of the action, no matter what the consequences might look like. And I could totally be wrong. And those friends could be like, you know what, that's super cool, girl. And we could all move on. Or I could lose this set of friends. And I'm not currently in a place where I'm like, okay, bye. But like, should that day ever arises, I'll let them know and we'll go from there. So yeah, just keep yourself safe and make sure you're mentally prepared for whatever could come next.
Sorry. Okay, so I also wanted to touch on, so within, and I want to speak on the family dynamic really quick again. How much do you think, I'm not going to necessarily say family, but society itself, are people affected? And I keep going back to the stereotypes because I've heard comments, and again, I'm just pulling things, I've seen a lot recently. I've seen people talk about how, and literally I know it's a stereotype, but they will talk about the various phobias that are within the LGBTQIA community, A plus community, sorry. And that part affects how they, as not someone of the community, looks at. Does that make any sense?
I think so, yeah.
I've just seen I've seen comments about that too. Like, well, let me give an example. I actually saw it over here in the comments. And y'all did briefly touch on it, but like as it relates to non community members, about the different phobias, like you were saying, lesbians can be biphobic, gay people can be transphobic. And that's what cis hetero people harbor off that because it's occurring within the community, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right.
Well, yeah, it's just a talking point for them. It's just a talking point and being a part of something that they're not a part of. Like if you look at society in general, a lot of people want to be a part of something that they're not. And they want to be able to speak about things like they might not necessarily have the total understanding of, but because they can talk, they will talk.
Right.
So I think people harbor onto that because it's such, right now it's just biphobia is a hot subject, especially on TikTok, and everyone's talking about it. And I can talk about it too because I have a voice. And just because you can talk doesn't mean you should talk. And a lot of people who are making the videos should not have made videos because it further adds to the dangerous rhetoric that is everywhere. There were a lot of videos. And my comment section was blowing up. Even now, I will get comments saying, well, just because I don't want a man who's been with another man, that doesn't make me biphobic. You're all so sensitive. And it's like, no. I'm not sensitive at all. First of all, I'm not bi. So like, I'm not that sensitive to it, but I am sensitive and empathetic enough to talk about like my brothers who are bi, who are dealing with this every day of their lives because people like you coming to my comment section talking about something that really doesn't matter. Like, if you don't, here's the thing, if you don't want to date a bi man, we don't care. We don't care if you don't want to date a bi man. What we do care about is for you to go through your introspection and be like, well, I don't want to date a bi man because that, if you, like I said, if you can sit there and say, okay, I understand what you're saying about this, but I personally cannot move past that. I am more comfortable with that than you telling me that it's just a preference. I would rather listen to that than saying, oh, it's just a preference.
Exactly. Like, then I know, like, oh, you are unwilling to learn to have this conversation. That's fine.
Right.
That's a you call. I'm going to go on about my life, as opposed to the, not only do I insist on not listening and learning with you, I also refuse to hold myself accountable for my actions. Like, I made a video and I was like, nobody cares if you're biphobic or not. They don't. What we care about is that you refuse to acknowledge the consequences of your actions. Like, you can make all the awful videos you want, acknowledge where you stand, and we can go on from that. Also, similarly related, every single time I hear somebody say, I don't like men who sleep with men, I don't understand it, because you sleep with men. You sleep with men. So what is happening with men that is so bad because you're also doing it? It makes no sense to me. I don't get it. I'm like, if they're so nasty, then maybe you should stop.
It's the femininity factor behind it. It's
like, quit.
My man is soft, and a lot of people automatically think, and this is a common misconception. A lot of people think they want the back door, and a lot of people aren't into that, even being gay.
Yeah,
a lot. They don't like it, and like, if more people understood that some people just don't like it, I think they would be like less wary of that.
Yeah,
and
like,
then
sex and just P and V sex. Like, there's or P and whatever. Like, there are so many ways to have.
Yeah,
like,
the satisfaction is there.
Like, you like, diversify, learn a thing. I bet you're bored. Learn a thing.
Yes, I think a lot of people just like they're just doing this, or like the Tyler Perry line, oh, so you're doing the bend in, like they automatically think that someone is more feminine because they're doing that. And it's like, I don't know what prompted this, like, in people's minds to be like, if he has sex with another man, he's automatically more feminine. But like, in retrospect, if you're having sex with another man, I think you would be more masculine, because like two hard-headed energies hitting each other. And if you really want to think about
really trying to think about it that hard, I guess.
like,
I don't get it.
Like, I don't understand
it's just
the
such
rationale
a weird take
behind
to me.
that.
I'm like, that's a weird way to take this whole exchange, because like, especially like girls who do it in the back, I'm like, homie, it's literally the same thing. I don't understand. Except like, girls don't have a spot in the back that feels good. I'm like, you're just doing it for the good sake of doing it. Like,
yeah,
who's having a good time? You're sad.
I also, honestly, I have a serious problem with why people feel they have to proclaim what their sexual preference is. And that's going to bring me into my next spot. I also think it's weird for people to ask other people, would you date a bisexual man? Or would you? That's weird to me. Like, why does this have to be a topic of conversation? But this leads me into this whole super straight thing that at one point was going on as well. Like, I literally feel
my God.
Every time, 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
It was literally the dumbest air quotes movement, because that's what they thought it was, I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
There was a whole flag and a whole, like,
first of all, the colors were the same as the Grinder flag, so I don't know how super straight they were.
That's what I'm saying.
Baby, I was like, that's Grinder all day, babe.
Like, that's crazy.
I don't know who put orange and black, because that is not it.
Y'all loud.
But the super straight people were really weird. Like, I've gotten to a lot of conversations about the super straight thing, because it's further adding to the transphobic narrative. Like, I will only be with a woman as long as she was born a woman. And a lot of people think of women as like only like vaginal canals. They like, you can have sex with me and then you can have a baby, and that's it. That's like what you are as a woman. And like, first of all, that's disgusting. But the transphobic narrative that was added to the masses because of this dumb quote movement, it's very harmful. But then you have to like turn to even our community, is you have the gay men who would not be with trans men because I don't want to be with a vagina. And it's like, I wish y'all would stop. because y'all sound really stupid. Like I swear to y'all. And the amount of times I made videos about this like last year, because there was a person who followed me. I don't know if they even follow me anymore, nor do I care. But he made a very transphobic video. And I was like, like you should probably take this down. Like you are a man. If you like men, you like men. And there are many other ways to have intercourse apart from your appendages that you have.
Right.
Let's be very clear. And I think people are very childish when it comes to sexual activities and stuff like that. Like we know this. But he was like, no, I bet you want to date a cis man too, because you want to have sex with a P. And I was like, you met the right one on the right day, because little do you know that I just like men. Like whatever is down there, I don't care about. I have been on dates with trans men. I have had relations with trans men. I have friends that are trans. I don't care about that, because I am, educated, and I had to do my own introspection many years ago, when I even like discovered like trans people were here and present. And I had to do my own introspection, like, why wouldn't I date a trans man if I like men? And if I personally didn't do that, I couldn't even sit here and have a conversation with that man, or even you all, to say like, yes, I had my own implicit biases because I thought men only had penises. Like you grow up thinking that. You don't even think about the people that you are dismissing or dissing based upon societal standards. Yeah. And I just wish more people would just sit back and think about that. And adding to the super straight, you're further adding to that. And then you have the pick-me's and LGBTQ plus community like, well, they're not wrong. I wouldn't date a trans person either. And it's just like, shut up.
Like, did they pick you, baby? Did they pick you?
Like you're not going to join their cult. So I don't even understand why you're even speaking.
Like either think hard enough to have intelligent conversations based on knowledge and growth, or think less hard. Think I like girls. And walk away, because you put so much thought into it that you've made it unsafe for other people. And I'm like, why? Like, it would have never occurred to me in all my life to make a movement about being super duper straight. I'm like, you corny. Like, you sit around like you were so afraid of being anything else that you made something. Like, why?
But then they were trying to add it to the LGBTQ plus community, saying like they were a part of it. And I was just like, why do you care about us that much when you're just going to come up with something? Why are we on everybody's
brain all the time? I'm like,
it's so
girl,
gross.
Relax. Like I live in your head,
rent free.
Ain't bought dinner, free. Let me leave, please. I don't get it. It's so, like, not only is it just harmful, because it's so dangerous and it makes life so unsafe for so many people, and we see it time and time again. It's just stupid. It's just dumb. Like, just if you don't date bi folk, cool. Don't date bi folk. Be like, dang, that's biphobic of me, and onward. Like, I always like to tell people, and they get mad at me for this. I'm like, I'd rather meet somebody who's committed to being racist. Like, I'm racist. I hate Black folk. And I'm like, all right, bet. Bye. Then somebody who's like, I couldn't possibly be racist. I'm like,
well, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you could just sit here and be like, yes, I'm exhibiting those behaviors, I don't think I'm going to change on that. But thank you for your words. I am more comfortable.
I'm like, okay, bye.
I can honestly respect somebody who just admits that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, if I was a person who did not, and you said, look, hey, by you saying that and you feeling that way, it is a phobia. It is biphobic.
Yeah.
Then what am I going to say that I can't tell you what is not a phobia
for you? You can do whatever you want.
Right.
And I went live with a mutual, and I love her so much. And we talked for a couple of hours about this, and I explained to her, like, and she was like, you know what, like, I do understand. I just don't know if I, even in life, and she's married, so she's not about to be dating anybody anyway. But she was like, I don't know if in my life I could be able to like move past that. I don't know that, but like I listened and learned from what you said. I am so happy that someone sat there and listened to it and understood. And even the people who were following me in my part of the live, they're like, yes, I understand what you're saying. Like, I don't know if I can move past that, but I do understand exactly what you mean. I would rather hear you understand what we mean and respect it and say, okay, I understand that my behavior exhibits some of this behavior. Okay.
Right.
Will I move past it? I don't know. Maybe I will in 5 years or 10 years. I don't know. But at least I know where you're coming from, and not that initial shock like, oh, you're biphobic.
Sorry.
It's okay.
My children they're like Sorry.
It's okay.
Kids do
Like,
what children
I
do.
would rather kids are crazy.
They do
That's
what
why
they
I'm never
do.
having any. But like for people to be like not that initial shock of like, oh, I'm biphobic, you're just attacking me. Like I would rather
Right.
talk to somebody with some sense to sit back and say, okay, I understand those behaviors. I completely understand.
Right.
And then move on.
Right. Like if you, and what I don't understand is then when you like form additional opinions after you state, like if you are biphobic, fine, but you denying biphobia then gives you beef with DL men. And I'm like, look, if you don't want them and you make the world unsafe for them, they don't exist. Actions have
They didn't
consequences.
come out of thin air.
Right. And like, I made a comment on this once. I was like, who do you think taught them to feel that? Like, because somebody was like, oh, like they're self-hating. And I'm like, who taught them to hate themselves?
Mm-hmm.
Who taught them? They didn't. Well, you know what? Good morning. I'm going to hate myself. Like, we don't do that. That's not the way we work. Somebody taught me to feel that way.
And something that really bothers me, and I talked about this as well, is like a lot of the times it comes from Black women.
Yes.
And I just cannot wrap my head around the most oppressed person in this world.
I'm like, how you get hit
adding
with
to
the
the
combo and then make
oppression
it
of
hard for somebody
others.
else?
Yes. I don't understand it. Like, not only are you Black, but you are a woman. And like, you're telling somebody of like the Black community, like they're lesser than. Right. And then you can't even sit back and say, okay, my behaviors have added to this culture. And like, in my experience in just life in general, whether it's like coworkers or some family members or anything, Black women, a lot of Black women literally sit in the biphobia tank.
Like
and
built a house there.
Yes. And they just do not understand, or maybe they do understand and just don't care the fact that they do that because they find bi men weak, or they find DL men especially weaker because they just can't be themselves. Well, if you didn't add to the mess, maybe they could be themselves.
Right. And I hate like the idea of exceptionalism. Like it's like, oh, well, like gay men exist, so like why don't you? And I'm like, you created an environment that's unsafe for them. Like I saw somebody who was like, oh, well, like it's hard to be fat and Lizzo exists. I'm like, how many Lizzos do we have? How many Lizzos?
I hate when they do that.
That's why
I hate when they do that because they take that one token person,
right,
and they do 100-meter dash with it.
Just think about you got it.
Think about Christian Walker.
Yes.
He's Black. He has a Black dad, so he's black, and he's gay. So I mean,
I can't.
He's the one.
It gives you the same energy as Obama. Obama was president. We're not racist anymore. I'm like, do you hear yourself? Listen.
They take
do not
one person.
Understand those analogies. I don't understand taking one person. That's why I wanted to bring up too, like, you have somebody from the community saying, oh, it's a preference. You don't have
pick me.
Right.
Which makes me feel like some cis people hear that and they're like, oh, they said it's a preference. So that means they're trying to force us because they're calling
pick me, choose me, love me.
Every time.
That's exactly what they do every single time. They look for that one comment that fits their narrative. It happens every single time. In any sort of discourse, you will find that one person that is a part of the marginalized community that is speaking up, that's saying, well, I don't care. Think about the N-word. Oh, I'm Black. I don't care. It's like
that's nice. That's nice.
Shut up.
Like, good for you. But the rest of us have issues. So can you stop talking for a second?
You and your friends can say that all you want, but I guarantee if your friends and you go out and do that, it's not gonna be a pretty sight. No. Just like stuff like that, people understand.
But they can't take the
cognitive dissonance
and bring it over here. I'm like,
they literally cannot pull it from one place it's like, just pull your thoughts on this, and like if you just move it over here for a second. Like, you don't even have to keep it there. If you just move it over there for a second and just have some sort of understanding, I promise you wouldn't be so confused in the world.
Like, I feel like the transitive property absolutely destroyed them in high school, because that point A to point B, nothing.
Knocked them out.
Like, what is wrong? Wow, what you said is incredibly racist. Says the exact same thing, but in references to bisexuality. And I'm like, you did that. And can't take that over here. Oh, I would never date a Black girl. Nothing wrong with them, but they're just not my type because of insert racist thing here. I never date a bi person because of insert biphobic thing here. I'm like, you heard it, and then said it again. And
Like you said it again in a different way, and you just still don't.
You don't get it, babe. You don't get it.
You don't get it.
People like to say things over and over till they believe it.
They believe it every single time. And for me, like I said in the beginning of this, like when it comes to racism or misogyny, you get it right away. It's like automatic. Like it's like, oh, I know the answer. But as soon as it comes to the LGBTQ plus community, you're like, I don't know. But I'm gonna talk about it, but I don't know.
Right.
But I'm gonna speak about it again, but I don't know.
I don't know.
Right.
And it's always people who are like as a bi woman who watches this all happen from the sidelines, I'm like, y'all loud and wrong. Loud and wrong. Every time. Here we are.
I could sit on here all evening, but I know Jordan has to go, so we're gonna wrap it up. But before we go, I was kind of pulling some things too from the people in the comments, but is there anything that you guys want to specifically address or specifically say to whoever sees this, whoever is in the chat or will ever see this? If you could just say one thing. I mean, it can encompass more things, but what would be the thing that you want somebody to know?
I would say always question your first thought, always question your initial reaction. Because what our first thought is what we've been taught. Our second thought is how we actually feel. And you should always question that first thought. If you think, oh, I would never date a bi man, question that, ask why, dig in that, and then build your second opinion. Determine how you actually feel as opposed to what you've been taught to feel. And if we could do that for like literally everything, my life might be a little peaceful, just a little bit.
Definitely. Introspection is key. To piggyback off of that. Just because you think something based upon what everyone else says doesn't mean that it's always right. And it could be right for you for 20, 25 years. But if it's something that you're saying that a marginalized group is saying is hurting them, you should probably think about why you keep saying something like that.
Right.
And what is prompting you to say something like that, or your actions that are happening. And if we all even sit down and just think about what we do on a daily basis and how that affects marginalized communities when they're speaking up, I think everyone would benefit from that for sure.
Absolutely.
I think those are both amazing sentiments. I'm going to get you guys just to hold on 1 second. I'm going to wrap it up, then I'll end the live. I want to thank everybody who joined and had all this great feedback. I definitely couldn't catch everything because I got to apologize. I don't know what my kids were on today, but it was like, stop, don't, hollering over this room and that room. So I apologize, but definitely I would say if y'all get a minute to check out the comments, there was a lot of great insight in what they were saying too. But